handle the truth.
The Denise Simon Experience. The Truth Matrix. Vetting, exposing, drilling down to the truth.
Rolling Thunder, this is Hitman, Seat, over. Hitman, this is Rolling Thunder, Seat out.
The Denise Simon Experience. Exposing politics, lies, demagoguery, spin, fraud.
Grid to suppress, Mike Charlie, 4 tree 5, 9er 2 1. Grid to mark, Mike Charlie, 4 7 tree 9er, 8 9er, out.
Promoting individual situational awareness. Question, probe, notice, ask why.
Mark smoke on the deck, 2 rounds HEBT, gas TOT 5-3.
And now, the Denise Simon Experience.
And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Denise Simon Experience. I've got a huge honor of having somebody I see on TV all the time. And I got so many things I want to ask her, but, I can't, yell. Well, I do yell at the TV. But anyway, she only gets 1 or 2 questions, and then her time's up, and I hate that. But Juanita Broaddrick has been kind enough to accept an invitation to be with us here on the Denise Simon Experience. And I'm so pleased with this. And Juanita, you are a woman on a mission, but it's not. I think it's a storytelling mission because you want some facts out there, right?
Oh, exactly. It's so opposite from Dr. Ford because there were no facts, regarding her allegations against our now Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh, and I have all the facts. I have the lady that found me, 30 minutes after the rape, and the 5 other people that I told. I have documentation that I was there on that day and that Bill Clinton was in Little Rock.
Mm-hmm. Juanita, this happened 40 years ago, and I would say for 40 years, the entire country has cheated you, but along with cheating you, they've cheated us because they refuse to acknowledge and check the box and talk about this story. So we don't always, we get maybe a snippet for 5 seconds and you got to go find the rest. And so we've been cheated, but most of all, you've been cheated. And so now you've decided, no more, right?
Right, exactly. But it's only been 20 years. Well, it'll be 20 years in January since I came forward.
Correct.
Well, probably 22 years since I was forced out, since I was outed for the Paula Jones suit.
David Kendall.
Oh, I know that name.
I know you do, and I know it too. This cat has been around the entire Clinton orbit, I think, since the Clintons were born. This cat absolutely has the keys to the kingdom, doesn't he?
Oh, yes, he does. He is at the depths of the Clinton swamp.
We cannot deny that Bill Clinton's a predator. There's you. There's just a list and a list and a list and a list and a list. Maybe you gals should be given some kind of a prize for enduring all of this.
Endurance, the prize of exactly. And it has been an endurance for all of the victims that suffered under Bill Clinton.
Where was the Secret Service in all of this?
Well, I think sometimes they were on the lookout when he was with someone to tell him, either when Hillary had come back to the White House or Hillary had come back to the governor's mansion or someone was going to find out, where he was and who he was with. Many of them were part of it. Many of them, of course, came out with their books and talked about how awful it was.
So Juanita, you've got to have some very thick skin here to deal with all of this. Did that take a long time for you to just kind of have some kind of resolve about all of this? Because I mean, even today, I know that you're under some kind of attack. Is that right?
Yeah, you know, of course, by the Democrats. I've been arguing, and I love to get into an argument with people that say, why can you not sympathize with Christine Ford when you are a victim yourself? And I'll say it's very simple. I do not believe her, and here is why. You know, there's no corroboration.
Mm-hmm.
But you must realize I went through that awful thing with NBC back in '99 where they held my interview. And it was degrading to me because I was told in the beginning that my interview would be aired during the impeachment hearing, and they held it until afterwards. And I was so disgusted after all of that was over with, and the media attacked me. So Denise, I went back into the woodwork until 2016, January of 2016, and that's when Hillary Clinton had tweeted and began to say this in her speeches, that all victims of sexual abuse should come forward and be believed, and we're with you. And I heard that after being quiet for so many years, and I thought, woman, not you. You do not have the right to say that, you of all people. And that's when I tweeted what I did in January. In fact, Denise, I had to have my grandson show me how to use Twitter. Had absolutely no idea how to use Twitter, but I knew I had to answer her. And that's when I tweeted on January the 6th of 2016. I was 35 years old when Bill Clinton, the Arkansas Attorney General, raped me, and Hillary tried to silence me. I'm now 73, and it never goes away. And I thought, you know, that looks pretty good. And I clicked tweet, and my God, all
hell broke loose.
Yes.
So I hope you have some security detail.
No, I don't. You know, but that's okay. I have a security gate and fence around my home, and I feel very protected by my neighbors and my security system. And I also carry a gun.
Yay! Yay! I bet you from day to day you kind of go from almost crossing your arms and stomping your feet to putting your hands on your hips to anger to you just want to go smack somebody. I mean, your emotions have to, you know, for the last several years have just got to run the gamut hour by hour depending upon what the headlines are, right?
Exactly. And then this morning I find out that Bill and Hillary are going on a
tour.
Speaking tour. My God. And they've announced it through, I don't know what source it was, and I renamed it. The Rapist and His Enabler Are Coming to a City near you.
Oh, you have got to absolutely have some inner strength that you need to be bottling and selling to some other women out there, Juanita.
Oh, that's funny. I don't know where it comes from, Denise. I swear I don't. Sometimes I get so down. But then it's the people that bring me back, the support that I have from all of the women and men in America. I mean, it's overwhelming.
Well, there are a bunch of good people out there. I will say that. And sometimes you have to find them or they'll find you. And sometimes they're few and far between, such that one encounter has got to hold you over for a long time till the next one comes. I was just having that discussion with somebody the other day. Oh, I had to talk with a nice person. It's going to have to hold me over probably a week.
Oh, well, I'm very fortunate. I have probably 100 every day.
All right, so you got a book. Tell us about this book. We need to promote your book.
Okay, my book, in fact, right now, I'm probably by Wednesday, I'll be putting it out on Twitter and also on Facebook. That would be signed copies that'll be delivered to the people that want to buy one. But my book is entitled, You'd Better Put Some Ice on That. And Denise, that is what Bill Clinton said to me before he left my room right after the rape. And he was referring to my lip, which was swollen and bleeding 3 times the normal size, and that's what he had to say to me before he left.
Are other women, when you tell them this story about Bill Clinton, are they in denial, or are they in shock, or how do they receive it? I mean, when that you make a TV appearance, or if you're in DC and you're having coffee with somebody, and you kind of give them some context to all of this, what's their reaction?
Well, a lot of the people that have never heard my name are very intent in listening to what I have to say, and they are very supportive as soon as I explain to them what happened to me. There's so many millennials and even people older, close to my age, that have never heard my name. Mm-hmm. But now with the social media and Twitter and Facebook, it's getting out there, and I'm so happy that it is.
It's got, but sometimes it has to wear on you, does it?
Oh, it does, yes. When I was in D.C. for the Kavanaugh hearings, of course, I was standing outside hoping I could get in. Alyssa Milano got in, but I didn't.
Yeah, I saw that.
I stood outside for hours and did interviews and watched these people that were so against Kavanaugh screaming and yelling, and most of them had no idea truly why they were there. You could tell they were people who had been paid to protest.
Yeah, they clearly were paid to protest. But Juanita, when you heard, I guess the details that Rachel Mitchell was getting from Dr. Christina Ford, which were, I don't know, they were so fractured, and then they weren't substantiated or they weren't corroborated. That had, and for you had the facts, you had the evidence. How does that work? I mean, how did you deal with that?
Well, I was a supporter of Kavanaugh. From the beginning, before she came out, I thought it would be a wonderful addition to the Supreme Court. And I had my reservations, but the moment I saw the woman speak and unable to give any corroboration to her allegations, I felt at the very moment she was lying. Now she may have had something happen to her, but in no way could you see a line back to Kavanaugh. No way.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like she was used by the Democrats, especially Feinstein. I mean, I felt like this woman, if she did suffer something, they should have set her down, talked to her, find out, tried to get to more of her memory to find out who it was, instead of choosing Brett Kavanaugh to blame it on.
So let's say on Friday, Senator Feinstein has carved out an hour for you to meet with her in her office. What would you like to say to her?
Oh, I would ask her, why, Dianne Feinstein, did you turn your back on me in 1999 and refuse to read my record with the independent counsel? Why did you and every other Democrat, including Dick Durbin and Senator Schumer, why did you turn your back on me?
And she would say, we had other priorities. We had a country to maintain, and so
okay, then I would say to her, do you not worry that you have a rapist in the office of the presidency?
Which is undeniable.
I know.
I mean,
it's just like my dear friend Dave Shippers, who passed away a couple of weeks ago, who wrote the book Sellout. He was the lead investigative counsel for the Judiciary Committee. And he wrote a book, and he said, we tried to get the Democrats, just read it. We're not going to bring her into the hearing, but just read her very credible account of what happened before you vote. And even a Republican at the time, Ted Stevens of Alaska, stood up in the committee and said, Henry, I don't care if you raped her, got up and shot her dead, you'll never get the vote. I mean, it was decided before they voted.
Did you expect this to be, I mean, where you are today? Did you have any expectations that you would be where you are today 10 years ago or 20 years ago, Juanita?
Well, I didn't expect it 1 month ago.
Okay.
It has mushroomed so much in the last month because of the double standard of Kavanaugh. It shows you that this is politically motivated and the double standard that has been all of these years.
Yeah, and then, what was the scandal that we had last year, Juanita, where we found out that we had this kind of quasi slush fund that several members
of the congressman. Yes. And we've never gotten a report on that yet, although people keep asking for this report. And also look at Keith Ellison. I mean, the very credible accusations against him. Just look at that. It's just awful. I mean, if he wins, he's about to go into the same office as Bill Clinton had and maintained the very day he raped me, the Attorney General. And I remember the people that came out against the former New York city prosecuting attorney, or the Attorney General.
Oh, yeah,
and they said,
yeah.
Mark something. And these women said, I didn't come forward. What do you do when your abuser is the top law enforcement officer in the state?
It's really kind of a remarkable condition because this Me Too movement has taken on a lot of different ramps to it. And some of them are valid, some of them are exploited, some of them, I don't even know how to describe them.
Well, I do.
Okay.
The Me Too movement is for liberal women.
Mm-hmm.
They have no room whatsoever for any of the victims of Bill Clinton. And they have let us know that in so many words. They have completely turned their backs on us and never have they included us. When the Time magazine article came out,
yes,
I was asked by Time magazine to give a supporting comment for the Me Too. And I did this through Charlotte Alter with the Time magazine. And I said, Charlotte, I have never been accepted by this, the Me Too. And I said, but it might help some people. So I'm going to go ahead and give you a comment. I issued the comment to her in support of Me Too because I'm sure it helps some people.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden I find out that they're the person of the year. And so I go to the article to see my comments, and they weren't there. And I contacted Ms. Alter, and I said, Charlotte, my comments weren't there. And her comment to me was, Juanita, we had so many comments, and there just wasn't room for yours.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So, sure.
No, I have no faith at all that the Me Too movement is for all women.
All right, let me ask you this question, because I've almost come to this conclusion. Ladies and gentlemen, we're speaking with Juanita Broaddrick, who I love her voice and I love her charm. And that's a sidebar. But I'm thinking that this Me Too thing, they have become bullies. And they're emasculating all men. Men don't know what to do. And I think men have succumbed in a lot of ways to this, and they're going to get away with it. Just like the lawyers that work for Christina Ford, right?
Oh, exactly. Back when I was growing up in the 50s and the early 60s, if anything like this happened, people would say, oh, men will be men, or boys will be boys. Just deal with it. And now, Denise, the pendulum has swung completely in the opposite direction, with men being accused, falsely. False accusations. When Senator Schumer put his number out on Twitter here 2 or 3 weeks ago and said, call this hotline if you've been raped or sexually abused, and so we can, help you. And then a woman tweeted after that, Senator Schumer, what number do I call when my precious young son is falsely accused of sexual assault?
Touché, huh?
Yeah.
I have 2 sons in their 30s, and I think about it often. I mean, there was a time when chivalry was, a real characteristic of men, and men don't even know what to do with that now, do they?
No, they don't. They don't know whether to open the door for a woman or what, because they're afraid it'll be taken wrong.
Is there a fix to any of this, Juanita?
Oh, I think it will, Denise. I think in time we're going to swing back to the middle again. It has to, because our nation can't go on like this. This is ridiculous.
Well, it's about as divided as I've ever seen, and I have a sense that we're going to be in this storm for, I don't know, a couple of years, I think.
Well, yeah, probably, but there has to be some good come out of the Kavanaugh hearing and my coming back out. There has to be some good in it. I even have Democrats that will contact me now and say, I've always believed you and I'm sorry. So that's a good thing. Yeah.
Well, for you and the others like Paula and Kathleen, I've got to say there's some real stick-to-itiveness here, and that's appreciated. And, I'm happy that your story is getting out there, even if it's in snippets.
Right.
Because we, as you mentioned, we have this millennial generation that has no concept. I mean, they don't even have a concept of what happened really at 9/11, much less 20 years ago or 40 years ago. And so
I do have a petition now, and I need 100,000 signatures, and I'm up to about almost 25,000 in a very short time, that will be sent to the White House to ask for a review and an investigation of the sex crimes of Bill Clinton.
Ooh, now where can we find the petition?
It's on my Twitter page and also on my Facebook page, Juanita Broaddrick. And hopefully, we can see if we can get an investigation going on him. My main reason, Denise, is this man draws millions of dollars of our tax dollar every year for being a former president. And I'd like to see this stripped.
Me too. I heard you say that. I didn't mean it to me too. So would I. Let me say it that way. Yeah. I heard you say that the other day, and I thought, she's smart. That's exactly what ought to happen.
Yeah, I can't. The statute of limitation is up for rape unless we can find someone that it's happened to, if he's raped or sexually assaulted someone in the last 10 years, like they did with Bill Cosby with Andrea Constand. That would be the only way that we could pull him back in court. But hopefully an FBI investigation on his sex crimes would promote us finding out, how many others there are like this.
And we certainly want to thank Juanita Broaddrick for her bravery and for being with us on the Denise Simon Experience. And with that, we'll see you again after the break.
About to join Don Newen, co-host of Cowboy Logic Radio, and Denise Simon, host of the Denise Simon Experience, for a weekly situation report, or SITREP. 18 hours a day, Denise Simon lives her life as an intel analyst. 18 hours a day, Don Newen lives his life in the world of rock and roll. 1 hour each day, Newen receives a daily SITREP from Simon. Welcome to the Drive Time Situation Report. Fasten your seatbelt. You're now in Don Newen's car, and he is calling in for his SITREP.
Check the Talk America Radio schedules for showtimes at talkamericaradio.us.
Let me talk to you, black people. When you vote for blacks and put them in office under the banner of the Democrat Party, please explain to me what black people get as a result. This was not a nap that we have been taking. We are in a coma. You know what the interesting thing about pensions is? That's today's money given to people who ain't doing nothing for you today. Get off that black Democrat tit that they've been sucking on. Your country is being stolen from you, and the promise is being stolen from your children, and they're telling you it's all right while the rest of the world is trying to lap us. Well, why are we doing so poorly? 2 words: teachers' unions. Are you kidding me?
Black Man Thinking, Monday nights, 9 p.m.
Hi, this is Donna Fiducia, co-host of Cowboy Logic Radio. For 28 years, I was in the mainstream media, most recently as an anchor at the Fox News Channel. No more. Ladies and gentlemen, the mainstream media has completely failed the American people. Radio networks like Talk America Radio will not fail you. Radio shows like Cowboy Logic Radio will not fail you. Check out the entire roster of over 60 weekly radio shows by visiting talkamericaradio.us. That's talkamericaradio.us.
TalkAmericaRadio.us.
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us here on the Denise Simon Experience. Very, very happy to be joined by an old buddy, Trevor Loudon. Trevor is a man on a mission. I mean, he's got a calendar that is so full it's almost hard to describe. Traveling the country and speaking to people that are so desperate for some direction and some messages and some truths, and Trevor does, in fact, do that. He is an author and a very successful producer of documentaries. And if for nothing else, you can travel on over to trevorloudon.com and see what's happening there. But in the meantime, thank you, Trevor, for being with us on the Denise Simon Experience.
Oh, look, it's a pleasure to be on, Denise. It's always great.
When you're invited to travel and speak around the country, my sense is people are still, I mean, we're in a very different place today than we were under the Obama administration, but I think people are still desperate for some real truths. They're being cheated, and I don't know how any other way to put it, but they're being cheated by media. And I would also say they're also cheating themselves because they're still not doing their own homework. And so they're looking for people like you to kind of just, put things in context and put things in perspective. Is that really what your audience is demanding of you, Trevor?
Yeah, they really want some context. We're continually told, that this is a very important election in 2018, but very, very few, even the very informed conservatives, have any real understanding of just how vital and what a huge difference this upcoming election could make. Now, every election they say this is the most important election in our lifetimes. Well, this one actually is, because this is either going to bring the country to its knees or set the country on a positive spiral, depending on how it goes. And I'm just encouraging everybody to double down and get actively involved in any way they can in some of the vital races around the country. And I lay out the consequences. I lay out the plan of the left, what they're trying to do, and most informed conservatives have no idea of what's actually happening with the left.
Well, and that's the scary part here, Trevor, is I don't see any real strategic thinking. I mean, people are reading the headlines or they're watching the 6 o'clock news, and they're not kind of tilting their head and going, that doesn't sound right to me, and whatever the headline may be, and they're not, going and finding out what else there really is. Is it true? Is that the whole truth? Or is it taken out of context? Is it twisted? And so, I mean, I found myself this past weekend actually explaining to a couple of gals who are pretty well in the know, a couple of things, and I had to say, no. Let me give you some some other facts, some other things that need to be in context. And when I did, they were just stunned. And that necessarily had to do with Dr. Christina Blasey Ford. Right. I mean, there's so many other moving parts to all of that, and they just, it's kind of like, what are you people doing? I mean, it is, you have a duty to get beyond what's sitting over there on the Drudge page, correct?
Yep, you do, and you don't just believe what you're told, and there are real agendas operating here. There's a civil war going on in America right now, and our side, the conservative side, is only dimly aware of it and are fighting reactively, and the left is very much aware of what they're doing. They have a strategy and they're implementing it very cleverly, and we're in danger if we don't mobilize our base for this election. We're in huge trouble, and most of conservatives do not have any idea what the left is up to, what they're planning to do.
I found myself saying this to a couple of men, and I really believe it to be true in my heart, is that now we have this women's movement, and the women's movement has become a bully operation. And they're not just attacking old white men, they're attacking men. And it doesn't matter what age. And it's kind of like, are you guys going to succumb to this? What say you?
Well, it's a demasculinization, because they want to completely, to put a no finer point on it, castrate the male population, so it is cowed and does not stand up to the agenda of the left. So that that every man has got to look at his past and see if I remember some inappropriate behavior they did when they're 17 or 23 or 28 or whatever, or 26, and wonder if they put their head up, if they make a stand, what's going to happen? Who's going to come out of the woodwork and destroy their family and destroy their livelihood and attack them in any possible way they can? And so men have got to really fight back against this. And I've got to say, I was not a huge fan of Brett Kavanaugh, but I've got to say I'm very pleased with the way that President Trump stood up for him and the Republicans stood up for him and pushed him through this. Because, to kowtow to the, to kowtow to the left on this would have just empowered the left and basically just powered so many more men out there. This is a real war on men and masculinity and leadership and every conservative value that we hold dear. And we've got to fight back real hard.
Well, I mean, I think all the indications were there, but people were not putting together the pieces. When we went to gender neutral bathrooms and anybody can use anything, and then they went into the whole football thing, and they're trying to, say that, these guys are violent, and, and then they do the same thing with the military. These guys, ROTC, we're teaching them to be killers. And I mean, so anything that has to do with the entire male gender is under attack. And I don't think some of these men necessarily know what to do. I mean, it's almost as though they've already surrendered, because any part of fighting back like Brett Kavanaugh did as Brett Kavanaugh and not as a judge in his testimony was every piece part of that. He was attacked on not having the I don't know, the stability, the intellectual stability to be a judge because he went on so much on the offensive. But people don't realize if you're accused of something as vile as he was accused of, you're going to earnestly fight back. And he was fighting back for his mother.
Yeah, well, you look at the Judge Roy Moore scandals in Alabama last year. Roy Moore lost because he didn't unequivocally deny the allegations. He was very equivocal about it. He was, well, that's not really how I would behave. I don't recollect anything of that nature. So that made people think either he's guilty or he's not a fighter.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to come out full on swinging against this kind of stuff. You got to take it right back at them. And if anything less than that, you're done. And a lot of, men are they think, well, either I am guilty or I haven't got the stomach for this and give up. So you've either got to have a squeaky clean clean past or be very, very willing to stand up for yourself. This is Alinsky, hold people up to impossible standards. Hold your enemy up to impossible standards. And nobody, there's no angels in the world. But, men are easy targets, and men are the hierarchy, men are the patriarchy, men are the ones who fight the wars, men are the ones who largely lead the country. And if you want to destroy the country, you have to destroy men and masculinity. And they're doing a great job of it. You don't see this kind of garbage amongst the Russians and the Chinese.
Indeed,
because
not.
they know they got to get up and fight the wars to kill us. They're doing it to us to weaken America, bring America down, and destroy the values that made America great. And this is a subversive activity, and people have to stand up to it.
I believe that the left has taken a wide look of American culture and history, and they have decided to break it down into piece parts and to plot against each of these piece parts. So
yes.
We have a war on religion. Okay, we have that. Now we have a war on the judicial system. We have a war on men. We have a war on our own military. So the entire left has and it's all couched under social justice. All they care about is a cultural, social agenda, and they don't care anything about national security. They don't care anything really about law and order, except to give a break. We're not, we're going to pay people to not be criminal.
They care about law and order because they want to destroy it.
Well, that's what I mean.
They care about national security because they want to destroy our national security. So, they don't care about actually preserving America's national security or preserving America's values. They understand what America's values are, and they're attacking them on every front. I went to a conference recently in Florida. It was people involved in the animal industries. People who have horses in Central Park and zoos and egg farms and ranches, and there's a huge federal attack and leftist attack on animal industries, because this is part of the food chain. This is part of the natural hierarchy of life that man is above animals, and so even that's got to be overturned. Even we are equal with the animals now. We can't keep animals, we can't keep pets, we can't go hunting, we can't eat animals for food. They're going to take it down those roads. And if you think there's not going to be a campaign on meat eating or fishing or hunting in the next few years, well, I bet you didn't think there's going to be one on transgender bathrooms a few years ago either. Because this is where they're going to take this stuff. They want to totally deconstruct.
Because there's money in chaos. There's money in
chaos and power in chaos. And they're trying to... See, what is revolution but overturning the natural hierarchies of life? You overturn the natural hierarchy of life. And that's what revolution is. And these are revolutionaries. So everything every hierarchy that we hold dear, every institution that we hold dear, the institutions of masculinity, the institutions of family, of the free enterprise economic system, of the rule of law, of the hierarchies of the military, the chain of command, every single one of them is under attack from the left, plus everything else they could think of.
So, Trevor, in your travels, and you explain this to your audience, they have to be in shock, and they have to leave there thinking, what do we do now? Because I don't know that people necessarily know how to fight back except to vote, and that doesn't, they probably think that's not enough, right?
Well, that's not enough. But what I say is this, right now, so we got a midterm election coming up. If President Trump loses the House, he gets impeached, and they won't win. They won't beat him, but they'll tie him up in so many knots that his presidency is effectively over. So then they will run Kamala Harris and Cory Booker, a black Asian candidate in 2022 and 2020. They'll massively ramp up their identity politics. Their strategy is to reinvent the Rainbow Coalition of Jesse Jackson from the 80s, where you unite the minorities together to form an unbeatable majority. And then they will legalize every illegal immigrant in the country, which we now know is at least 22 million, according to an MIT study.
Yes.
They will vote at least 80% Democrat, and they will have a one-party state. If we lose the election, we're heading down the road to a one-party state. People may think I'm exaggerating, but we will see. And but if we win 2018 and 2020. If we win 2018 and President Trump gets 3 or 4 or 5 more real hardcore senators behind him, so he doesn't have to rely on Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins, he can get that damn border wall built. He can get national security amped up. He can get the things done that he wants to do. And I think that will start a cultural shift. And it'll embolden people, and then we'll start to see increased business confidence. The taxes will keep coming down, the military will be strengthened, and I think America will gain a new confidence. And I think we could start a virtuous cycle, and we can work to abolish the Department of Education and stop the indoctrination of children. All these things are possible if our base comes out to vote in 2018. If our base doesn't come out to vote, we're looking at a huge loss and the end of the Trump agenda and Obama on steroids for the rest of our lifetimes. Now, so the downside is horrific and the upside is great. And it all comes down into what we do in the next 4 weeks.
I'm kind of surprised at two things. I need you to help me with this, Trevor. And that is, I'm surprised that the Trump White House has not assigned some kind of a pretty savvy political team that has gone in and done a complete autopsy on the Obama administration to look at their tactics, to look at their plots, to look at their activities, hidden and known and unknown, and said they did this and they did that, they did this, and they got away with it. Such that some of those same machine and tactics could be applied now against the left. That'd be the first thing. The second thing is, I'm surprised that we don't have anybody in this White House or in the Department of Justice that has gotten on TV and made a big announcement and said, the left, with all of these tactics that we saw all through the whole Brett Kavanaugh operation, with screaming people off the streets, out of restaurants, chasing them in airports, like stalking them. The whole Antifa thing, taking over the Senate building, screaming in hearings and all that they are going to begin to start prosecuting because we have to recognize what is happening and that there are laws broken. It's not enough just to arrest a handful of protesters and they're in jail for 24 hours. Then you got Thomas Dyer that's paying their $200 bail to get him out.
Yeah.
So there's some things here that really, I would say, some proactive, aggressive measures that this administration can be taking, yet I'm not seeing it. I keep having these expectations that there's going to be some 8 o'clock fireside chat on national television with Trump and Sessions or Trump and, you know what I mean?
Well, I think, look, this would seem obvious to me. Look, we're in a pre-revolutionary situation.
Mm-hmm.
These people are really trying to bring America down. And they're breaking laws all the time with apparent impunity. Back in 1968, there was the famous trial of the Chicago 7, where they had massive riots against the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. Mm-hmm. Many people were hurt. There's a wonder people weren't killed. But the 7 leaders of that were prosecuted and jailed for the felony of crossing state lines to start a riot. Well, Antifa and Black Lives Matter do that every single day.
Yes.
And it was acknowledged at the time by the people who were jailed, that jailing broke the back of the protest movement. That the protest movement went into decline from that point because their leaders were jailed for committing felonies. Well, this is what has to happen now.
Yes.
Because, it absolutely has to happen, because these people are breaking the law with impunity. I don't know, maybe President Trump's being very clever and giving them enough rope with which to hang themselves. I don't know. But I think it's more just a lack of understanding how serious the situation is, and how that the public would absolutely go nuts. They'd love to see some of these people put in the slammer. They'd love to see some of these people prosecuted. I think it would do President Trump's re-election chances a great, great favor. And it would encourage, like I was talking to a cop the other day out in Montana, and I just said, what's the morale in the police now that President Trump's elected? He said it's gone up dramatically, because they're getting support now, they're getting funding, they're getting what they need to get. But they're still not dealing with these revolutionaries on the streets. And I think that would encourage the police, it would encourage the general public. And I think if President Trump cracks down on these people, he would win in 2020 in a landslide.
I do too.
And people are crying out for this.
I do too, and I feel like I need to, call 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue and say, I've got this speech written. Can somebody schedule some time here on broadcast TV and turn on the lights and get the cameras rolling, because this administration is sitting in the catbird seat. They've been handed something here on a silver platter, and they can take this very moment and probably seal the whole deal going into the midterms. And just say, look, we've got RICO cases, we've got campaign finance violations, we have got, people that are bribing for votes like they did to Susan Collins, on these GoFundMe. We'll give you $1 million if you vote no on Kavanaugh, but if you don't, we're going to give the money to your opponent. And it looks like that opponent could very well be Susan Rice, because she's on the House. So, somebody needs to do a whole strategy type operation here and take this bull by the horns. This is it's a bird's nest on the ground that needs to be exploited, and I'm just waiting for this moment, and I might keep waiting.
It seems like such a no-brainer, doesn't it? The public wants it, his base wants it. There are the laws and the powers there right now under RICO and many other statutes to really hammer these revolutionaries, and they are revolutionaries. They're committing sedition and all sorts of crimes, intimidating people, vote fraud, on a regular basis, and nothing seems to happen to them, and this is driving people nuts. So look, that's the message to President Trump, loud and clear. Come down on these people. How many? Are we going to wait till people are killed? Are we going to wait till people are stalked and their homes are bombed or their children are assaulted? What have we got to wait for here?
Well, that's my thought. I don't think it's enough just to go to the RNC or hope to go to some of these ad agencies and do some really, terrific 30-second TV ads. that's not enough because not everybody's watching, Fox News, or not everybody's watching.
People want action here.
Yes, I mean let's do this. We want to see it in like real time video, like body cams.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems such a no-brainer, and I honestly think that President Trump, when I'm hoping he wins the House and the Senate, that he replaces Jeff Sessions with someone far more aggressive at the Justice Department and purges the top ranks of the Justice Department and the FBI, then actually turns those agencies into investigating real criminals rather than Tea Party types and military veterans, when you've got an Antifa and a radical left out there that are committing felonies on a daily basis, clearly in collusion with the Democratic Party and people like Soros and Steyer and others, this is grounds for massive Justice Department intervention here, and people need to go to jail for this kind of stuff.
Well, maybe we start sending them bills for all the overtime that law enforcement needs to work, and from Capitol Police to the, the LA Police Department. I mean, at some point, those dollars are breaking.
They send bills to us, like when Philo
yes, they do.
wants to get, to go and speak at university. The group that's hosting them will get a $65,000 bill from the university for security. But the left doesn't ever have to pay anything like that. The left gets protected, and the left gets allowed to commit crimes. And A, they don't get punished for the crimes, and B, they don't have to pay for any of the security costs. But we do.
Yeah, so take out a full-page ad in the Washington Post and say, here's the bill for, the overtime duties of the Capitol Police for what happened in the last 2 weeks and all the protests in Washington, D.C., and we're going to charge this over to, Open Society or, some of these other groups and name the people. Here's your invoice.
Here's, $835,000 for Tuesday, and cough up, please, Mr. Soros.
Indeed, right.
That would change the game very, very quickly. And it just seems so obvious what needs to be done. And President Trump is a man of action who has carried through his word in so many areas. And this seems like an obvious next move to start cracking down on the leftist criminality that's enveloping the country.
Well, I think we know.
How bad does it have to get?
We're beginning to know the list of these revolutionaries and these enemies, but I would say as long as they're force multiplying, that list is getting longer and longer and longer. So I don't know who's keeping tabs. I don't know if the FBI is doing that. I don't know if Department of Homeland Security is doing that.
The FBI is far too concerned about the Pensacola Tea Party to be worried about Antifa or, they're far too busy looking at the Southern Poverty Law Center latest hate list to be concerned about anything like Antifa or Communist Party or revolutionaries on the streets right now.
Ladies and gentlemen,
it's still the sad reality. Unfortunately, the FBI is still under leadership that's highly suspect. It's leftist partisan, so they're not going to help our side. They're not going to go after the real bad guys.
We've been speaking with Trevor Loudon. Find his work over at trevorloudon.com. He's out on the road. He took a few minutes to speak with us. Thank you, Trevor. Travel safely, and we'll see you again real soon.
You can't handle the truth. The Denise Simon Experience. The Truth Matrix. Vetting, exposing, drilling down to the truth.
Rolling Thunder, this is Hitman. Seat over. Hitman, this is Rolling Thunder. Seat out.
The Denise Simon Experience. Exposing politics, lies, demagoguery, spin, fraud.
Grid to suppress. Mike Charlie 435 9er 21. Grid to mark. Mike Charlie 47 tree 9er 89er out.
Promoting individual situational awareness. Question, probe, Notice. Ask why.
Mark smoke on the deck. 2 rounds HEPT. Gas TOT 53.
And now, the Denise Simon Experience.
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for hanging with us here on the Denise Simon Experience. One thing we haven't talked about yet is the Supreme Court and the new composition now that Justice Kavanaugh is there. And so I do what I always do. I tap my friends on the shoulder over at Pacific Legal Foundation. And the short straw was pulled by Tony Francois. So thank you, Tony, for spending some time with us on the Denise Simon Experience.
Oh, my pleasure, Denise. And I would reject saying that it's the short straw.
Thank you. Thank you. As a sidebar, I kind of want to start off with this because it's only been in the headlines for, 90 seconds. And apparently, there's some news stories out there. I think Forbes did a fairly lengthy one that we have some kind of ethics complaints, at least a dozen or so, on Judge Kavanaugh. And apparently they've made their way over to Chief Justice Roberts. And so I don't know what Chief Justice Roberts, how he reviewed them or what he necessarily did, but with them, except to turn them over to the 10th Circuit. For what, I guess? Maybe you can kind of shed maybe a little light. I mean, are they supposed to do some kind of ruling? Are they just supposed to review it? Is this to take whatever demerits that are by his name, or they call them asterisks, by his name, and they get removed? I mean, do you have some kind of a gut feeling in what's happening here? It's kind of blindsiding you a little bit, Tony.
Sure. Well, in general, there are what are called canons of ethics for federal judges, and these address things like their behavior on the bench and their treatment of litigants and maintenance of decorum, and certainly any actions they take on the bench or perhaps elsewhere that indicates a bias that would prevent them from ruling fairly in cases. Now, there are some fairly clear rules about, for example, when judges are supposed to recuse themselves from cases because of relationships with parties, sometimes witnesses. So if a member of the public or a member of the bar, thinks that a particular judge has, violated these ethics rules, there are basically ethics complaint offices at the federal courts of appeal and in the federal district courts, the trial courts, and pretty much anybody can actually submit a complaint that alleges that a judge has violated the ethics rules, and that he or she should then be investigated by the other judges, basically. Now, in the normal course of things, if there is news that a particular judge has been ruled by his or her colleagues as having violated the ethics rules, that's typically because of something inappropriate that's been done during a case. A judge treating a witness or a party in an obviously unfair or disrespectful manner. Judges are supposed to avoid getting into confrontations and arguments with witnesses and with parties before them. Now, there, as you mentioned, I think a lengthy article in Forbes describing a series of complaints that were made against now Justice Kavanaugh during the September 27 hearing of the Senate Judiciary Committee, in which he and Dr. Ford provided their quite different testimony about whether or not he was involved in assaulting her in high school. And reading kind of between the lines of the story and kind of thinking, okay, so here's what the article describes these complaints being about. They appear to have to do with either his sort of tone and manner
decorum.
of the way he made his statement, kind of the highly emotional state that he was in when he made his statement and when he answered questions. And perhaps, and I think this is something that he himself has addressed since then, his attribution of the opposition to his nomination to political motives, and particularly sour grapes by the Clintons. And I think others have noted, and in fact, one of the Democratic senators noted that plenty of actual partisans were more than ready to blame the Clintons for the campaign against his nomination. He should have left it to them and not made the partisan statements that he did during that hearing. But so the balance of this, appears to be a complaint that he was emotional and high-handed and sort of acting out. I'm kind of annoyed by that as a complaint about his judicial temperament or bias, because there's an important foundation for these canons of judicial ethics, which is that no judge can be the judge of his or her own case. When a judge is accused of something, they're not acting as a judge anymore. They're just acting as a witness.
As an individual. There's a distinction.
And so it is, frankly, I think absurd to say that in defending himself against very serious allegations, attempted rape, that he had a responsibility as a judge to be, even and calm and of judicial temperament in that setting. And you can contrast that hearing and the way he defended himself to the way he conducted himself during the actual confirmation hearing a month prior, in which he was very even and academic and, I think showed very admirable temperament in the face of very hostile and frankly moronic questions from several members of the committee. He was accused several times, too polite to say, "Senator, you have no idea what you're talking about." And I think that speaks well of him. And, for example, the American Civil Liberties Union has spent large coin opposing his confirmation. I am quite confident that he will give ACLU clients a very fair hearing as a member of the Supreme Court. The ACLU appears on behalf of clients frequently in the Supreme Court. They will appear in front of him, and he will be fair in dealing with them. So, without knowing more,
this is really kind of a gesture. This is kind of a gesture, perhaps, on the part of Chief Justice Roberts.
Well, so these complaints were originally filed with the D.C. Circuit Court, which is the court that he was a member of when they were made. They appear to be basically people watched the hearing, took offense at the way he defended himself, and then said, "Well, he's showing bias, and I'm going to make a complaint about that to the D.C. Circuit Court where he sits." An early story on this said that some of the complaints were considered frivolous, and others warranted forwarding to the Supreme Court. Now, because Justice Roberts is a member of the Supreme Court, Justice Kavanaugh is now a member of the Supreme Court. Justice Roberts, I think, is simply referring these out to a different court, albeit a junior one. But just a different group of judges. And my understanding of the process at this point is he's simply asking them, all right, you guys, gather in your, whatever your ethics committee is at that court, the 10th Circuit, which is one of the federal appeals courts that's headquartered in Denver. And you tell us what you think of this. And, something may come of it, something may not. It is not the type of thing that would, for example, lead to a judge being removed from the court.
Okay, that's the big question.
So the judges have the ability to censure and sanction each other for violations of these ethics rules, but they're really more along the lines of simply making a record that a judge has done something improper. Now, more serious infractions of the ethics rules, like the judge took a bribe from a party, okay, which occasionally happens and is actually, I think, the basis of most of the successful impeachments of federal officials in our nation's history has been federal judges who have taken or solicited bribes. And there's, I want to say, about 10 of those over our 200-plus year history. And there would be an ethics complaint and an investigation, or a determination of that, that kind of behavior, and that would likely lead to an impeachment inquiry in the House, those and indictment by the Justice Department and prison and things like that. But where a judge is thought by his or her colleagues to have displayed bias. I think that, down the road, there certainly may be cases in which parties, for example, if the Democratic Party is a party before the Supreme Court in a dispute, I would certainly see their attorneys asking Justice Kavanaugh to recuse himself from the case. And, he would probably, in the exercise of his responsibility as a judge, give that some serious consideration. Because I think it is true, it is a fair criticism of his defense before the Judiciary Committee that it was not necessary to his defense to make the partisan statements that he did, and not the wisest thing for him to have done as a sitting judge. In a certain sense, I think everybody knows that judicial appointments, particularly to the Supreme Court, have a political backstory. Justice Kavanaugh worked in the White House and at the Justice Department. Justice Gorsuch worked at the Justice Department. Justice Thomas, served at the EEOC. Chief Justice Roberts worked at the Justice Department. Justice Kagan was the Solicitor General. I mean,
they all have a history.
That political relationships and opportunities are important in many nominations to the Supreme Court. And it's also, goes without saying that there are political fault lines in the arguments over their nominations and confirmations. So in a certain sense, it would be hard to say, that a judge who's ever said anything partisan can never then rule on a political case. I mean, good heavens, the Supreme Court ruled in Bush v. Gore on whether or not the state of Florida could continue its selective recount of presidential ballots. So, and amazingly, the Republican appointees ruled for the Bush campaign and the Democratic appointees ruled for the Gore campaign in that. There tends to be a certain amount of sort of cynicism that says, well, what would you expect them to do? But, in general, I think the justices take their work very seriously. They have a certain perspective, and Democratic presidents tend to nominate, more outcome-driven justices. I think that's, fair to say.
Fair to say.
Outcome-driven justices. Whereas Republican presidents tend to nominate, over the last several administrations, judges that are far more focused on the text of the Constitution, the laws that Congress passes, and constitutional limits on both congressional and executive power in defense of individual liberty. And so, in a certain sense, you could say, well, that's a political divide, but really what it is a difference of view over how judges should interpret the law, and there happens to be, a political alignment following those two views. But, at the end of the day, I think they take their work very seriously. Justice Kagan said something very important last week, which is that the Supreme Court needs to be seen and understood as something more than merely the extension of politics. Otherwise, people lose their trust in what it does and their sense of confidence that they are.
Which is kind of interesting coming from her, isn't it?
Well,
and the reason I say that is because when she was Solicitor General and did not recuse herself on Obamacare.
Well, and that's that's a fair question. However, I would say in her defense that I think that she is serious in saying that and means it, and recognizes that after the political scrum is over about who joins the court, as members of the court, they owe each other a level of collegiality and respect, and each of them owe the country their level best effort to interpret the Constitution and laws correctly and evenly toward all parties who appear before them. I think fundamentally, Justice Kavanaugh's record shows that is what he will do, and I think it is unreasonable to understate it, I suppose.
Well, let me ask you.
Complain about the way he passionately defended himself.
Yeah, I mean,
accusation.
He was putting himself back in time and space, and is in high school and in early days of college. I mean, he was there as a quote student/civilian and not as a judge in that particular exchange, as I see it.
No, I think I think that is the correct way to see it, and in particular, because he's the accused in that setting, he is not a judge.
Correct.
In that sitting.
And he said so. He said, "I'm here, on behalf of my parents and my wife and my daughters."
Yeah.
He didn't present himself as a judge in that whole thing.
Yeah, and in particular, I am certain that he never said. I watched that whole hearing. What a day! I am certain that he never said, "Hey, you got to take my word for what happened. I'm a judge."
Yeah, he didn't do that.
And then so my recitation of the facts is more persuasive than the Dr. Ford's because I'm a judge. He never said that.
Yeah, he didn't invoke that at all.
No.
And when you get to ethics, I mean, if anybody wants to look at any kind of weirdness, all you have to do is kind of go back to Judge Ellis and how he handled the courtroom on the Manafort case. He was a little on the weird side on the Manafort case, right?
Actually, I'm not familiar with the sort of the courtroom level of.
All right, well, there's some homework for you.
Well, you can't follow them all, unfortunately, but or maybe fortunately. But I have to say this. There's been a lot said about the committee's hearing process, how due process applies, and what would happen in a real lawsuit. And people need to understand. First of all, it is rare that every party in every lawsuit gets to put on every witness they want. It is common for judges to say, to tell a party, you can't present that evidence, you can't present that witness.
Mm-hmm.
There are a variety of reasons for that.
Mm-hmm.
And frequently, I've experienced this myself on behalf of my clients and as an attorney. You come away from a judge's ruling on whether you can present a witness or documents or some other kind of evidence and think, dang, I don't feel like I got a fair shake. I should have been able to present that.
Mm-hmm.
And, it is just a reality of legal proceedings that a million decisions get made in the course of them that shape how you're able to present your case. And that has an impact on whether the decision maker, whether that's a judge or a jury or a Senate committee, how they view what the facts are. And I think that, it is, I think, the case that, I actually think, Senator Flake was correct, at some stage of this in saying, we'll probably never know to a certainty what did happen to Dr. Ford, and when. But you have to take the information that you do get.
Exactly.
And make the best decision that you can make based on that evidence. And, that's the responsibility that committee has as decision makers, and ultimately the Senate has as decision makers.
Well, Pacific Legal's got a couple of cases before the court now. Do you expect a different kind of environment or different kind of attitude now that Kavanaugh is on the court and presenting the cases from Pacific Legal?
Well, I think it is an important change in personnel on the court. So Justice Kavanaugh replaces the now retired Justice Kennedy. And so in a certain sense, Justice Kennedy tended to be, supportive of and protective of property rights as a member of the Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. And that is, the core of what I do at Pacific Legal Foundation is protecting people's property rights through court litigation. And yet at times, Justice Kennedy was unpredictable in how he would decide cases and, how protective of property rights he would be. I think that Justice Kavanaugh, now on the court, is going to be a little bit more methodical and
circumspect.
I just think, his, if you read his decisions as a judge on the D.C. Circuit, which doesn't hear a lot of, strictly property rights cases, but, he has made a lot of, significant rulings in, for example, environmental law cases that I handle quite frequently, that show that his view is that the Constitution comes first, and that the purpose of the Constitution, the separation of powers in it, and the Bill of Rights is to clearly protect certain aspects of private life from government interference, and that obviously property is one of those, clearly laid out in the Fifth Amendment, and that he takes that seriously to the degree that if the Constitution or, for example, an enabling statute doesn't give a bureaucratic agency the power to do whatever it wants to do, he's going to say you don't have the authority to do that, either because of this constitutional limit or because Congress never allowed you to do it. And he's not going to be swayed by the argument that, well, this is just so important to be done that you have to let us do it to these people. You have to let us invade or burden their property or limit their use of it.
He uses the Constitution as a shield of protection as well as he should. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been speaking with Tony Francois, who, thank you for that whole explanation. That puts an awful lot of things in context for us. And, we little people out here don't get to see all that machinery. But thank you, Mr. Tony, and thank you to Pacific Legal. Ladies and gentlemen, more coming your way.
About to join Don Newen, co-host of Cowboy Logic Radio, and Denise Simon, host of the Denise Simon Experience, for a weekly situation report, or SITREP. 18 hours a day, Denise Simon lives her life as an intel analyst. 18 hours a day, Don Newen lives his life in the world of rock and roll. 1 hour each day, Newen receives a daily SITREP from Simon. Welcome to the Drive Time Situation Report. Fasten your seatbelt. You're now in Don Newen's car, and he is calling in for his SITREP.
Check the Talk America Radio schedules for showtimes at talkamericaradio.us.
Let me talk to you, black people. When you vote for blacks and put them in office under the banner of the Democrat Party, please explain to me what black people get as a result. This was not a nap that we have been taking. We are in a coma. You know what the interesting thing about pensions is? That's today's money given to people who ain't doing nothing for you today. Get off that black Democrat tit that they've been sucking on. Your country is being stolen from you, and the promise is being stolen from your children, and they're telling you it's all right while the rest of the world is trying to lap us. Well, why are we doing so poorly? 2 words: teachers' unions. Are you kidding me?
Black Man Thinking, Monday nights, 9 p.m.
Hi, this is Donna Fiducia, co-host of Cowboy Logic Radio. For 28 years, I was in the mainstream media, most recently as an anchor at the Fox News Channel. No more. Ladies and gentlemen, the mainstream media has completely failed the American people. Radio networks like Talk America Radio will not fail you. Radio shows like Cowboy Logic Radio will not fail you. Check out the entire roster of over 60 weekly radio shows by visiting talkamericaradio.us. That's talkamericaradio.us.
TalkAmericaRadio.us.
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us on the Denise Simon Experience. One of the country's most favorite sheriffs. Boy, if I mention his name, people kind of look at me sideways and go, man, we sure would like to talk to him. Sheriff Mark Lamb has become a celebrity. And I don't think you really meant all that, did you, Sheriff? He really doesn't need an introduction because the whole country knows who Sheriff Lamb is. Thank you, Sheriff, for being with us on the Denise Simon Experience.
Thank you, Denise. I'm glad to be on.
So let me start off with something kind of fun. Who won the cowboy hat?
So it was a lady out of Orange Park, Florida, Wendy, and we delivered that hat a few weeks ago. And it was awesome. We had a great time. Went to lunch with her and her husband, and spent the day with her. It was fun.
You had to go all the way to Florida to deliver it.
Yes, but we were prepared. We actually had New Zealand, Australia.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, so there weren't a lot of those tickets, but there were some tickets. There was Hawaii. I think we had all 50 states that had somebody donated from.
How much money did you raise?
We raised $21,000.
Yay! Did you expect that number?
I think I expected a little bit more. I don't want to be that guy that looks the gift horse in the mouth. I am very grateful for what we raised, but we had I think when I first started it, we had probably 6-7 million views on my cowboy hat lip sync challenge. Yes. So I thought that it would spread a little bit more, but I mean, I'm still super grateful for what it did. I'm just being honest with you. I thought we'd probably hit 25 at least.
All right. So explain the American Sheriff's Foundation. So people necessarily understand it. Maybe you can get a few more donations to get you up to 25,000.
Well, we're getting ready to actually do another raffle, and I'll tell you about that one. Maybe we can get people to join in. But
all right, break the news.
So I started the American Sheriff Foundation. I knew I wanted to do something when I became sheriff. I'm a big believer in where much is given, much is required, and so it took me about 6 to 8 months to really decide on what the purpose of the charity would be, and I started looking for names and saw that American Sheriff was available, and so I just immediately, it hit me, that's it. And our mission is to bridge the gap between communities and law enforcement. And what we do is try to go into communities where that relationship between the law enforcement and the community is struggling, and go in and serve the people and do some good. And it goes both ways. It's also an area where where the law enforcement may have lost faith in the community as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so we want to just try to get out and do service and help where we can. And obviously I started it here in Arizona, but I'm heading out this week this is where our next raffle comes in. I'm heading out this week to Greene County, Missouri, which is another live PD. Their county is also on live PD. So about a month ago, they lost a deputy. His car got washed away. When they found him, he also was found dead next to his car.
Aww.
So we are going to do another raffle, and obviously my hat will be part of it. But the winners of the raffle will fly two people, a trip for two, to Greene County to meet those who are a part of Live PD, and then to be they'll be the ones that actually deliver the check to the wife of the fallen deputy. So I think it's going to be it's for a great cause to help that family, and a lot of the proceeds will also go to the 100 Club here in Arizona that benefits injured and fallen officers as well. And you can donate at AmericanSheriff.org. Now, I do not have the newest raffle. It won't be on till this weekend. This weekend, we'll actually have I'll do another video, and they'll be able to start buying raffle tickets this weekend for the next drawing.
Outstanding. So you really are everything that everybody thinks you are. You are just that kind of sheriff, aren't you?
I don't know about that. I take very serious the fact that I'm an elected official. I believe wholeheartedly that the people have put me in here, and I'm determined to give them every ounce of energy, whether it be as a sheriff or if I can give back through this charity or any other means. I try to do that. So that's not what I go out looking for. I just really want to do my job and try to help touch people's lives if I can.
You know, when I met you in D.C. and probably 10 or 15 other sheriffs in Washington, D.C. Several weeks ago, and I had met the year before many of them at that point too. It's very gratifying, and it's very it's a wonderful thing that sheriffs across the country understand their constitutional oath, that they are such a tight network, and it's a real brotherhood, sisterhood type bond. It's real gratifying. Did you actually expect that when you became sheriff?
You know, I didn't, and I agree with you. It is very gratifying. You know, I knew that when I became sheriff, I just didn't understand the magnitude and how similar the problems and the issues that we deal with are, even though each state varies and each county varies. Mm-hmm. It was gratifying to see so many men and women that are not just dedicated to the Constitution, but they're dedicated to their communities. Mm-hmm. And you're right, you hit it right on the head. And so that has been very gratifying for me, and I've met a lot of good men and women that I've really enjoyed networking with, and that's one of the things I want to do is roll my charity out. I want to get as many sheriffs involved as possible, so we spread across this country, and it gives them another platform to continue to do good in their communities, not just as an elected official, but also as just somebody who's committed to that community and committed to seeing it better.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're speaking with Sheriff Mark Lamb of Pinal County, Arizona. There's a county not too far from me. It's not my county. It's Polk County, and that sheriff is Grady Judd. And I mentioned him to a couple of sheriffs when I was in D.C., and I guess you all do know each other quite well. But he has a social media person on his staff over there that does some remarkable stuff on Facebook. Every day, Sheriff Grady Judd is doing a Facebook Live event about some law violation or some criminal in his county, and they talk about it, and we need some help and this and that, and they're comical because they use these real creative hashtags. And what that I think does is it endears people to the sheriff's department. And I know that you are doing that yourself. I mean, you have endeared yourself to your county, and you've endeared yourself to people all across the country because of Live PD. Did you expect to have all this notoriety?
No, I mean, it's difficult to have, like, I would have never have thought, like, Live PD would have taken us to where we are. We did it because we thought it would be good for recruiting, and we thought it would be good for growth of Pinal County. We're, by percentage, we're the fastest growing county in Arizona. By population, not necessarily, because Maricopa County's got such a huge population, but I knew that it would, we would, just because of where my county is, that we'd be on the news a lot. I would have never have expected to have the national recognition that I've gotten. And I was standing at Disney World, and I just had a T-shirt and shorts on, no cowboy hat, and I heard a lady behind me like, "Sheriff Lamb," and so I think in Vegas I had 3 different people recognize me and want to take a picture. And I love it. I just love being around people, so it doesn't bother me at all. But sometimes it's a little, I'm just a normal old guy. I mean,
it's a little burdensome, isn't it?
It is, but at the same time, like, I don't see the fanfare. Like, I'm just Mark. My wife laughs because my wife knows me better than anybody. She's a good sport about it, but sometimes she's like, it's just you. Like, it's, you don't see yourself that way.
That's cute. So are you guys on a little bit of a vacation on Live PD? Because we haven't seen much of you on my husband's addicted to Live PD. I can't. I'll do 5 minutes of it. But
there's a lot of people that are addicted to it.
They are. I mean, there's a whole cult.
Revolve around it. Anniversary and birthday be damned. They're gonna they're gonna watch Live PD.
That's right. That's exactly right. So are you on a little bit of a break, or has this been good for the sheriff's department, or how's that working?
It was like right after I went into the studio at the end of July. When we came back, I missed the next week because I had to do something. And then the week after, they called and said, hey, it was like a Monday morning. I had a call Sunday night. Monday morning, they said, hey, we're leaving, and we're in the car already driving to Texas. So the crew had called me, and part of it was there was some contractual issues that they had to get out to Mission, Texas. Another part of it is, we were getting into the fall and it was already dark. So they start on the East Coast at 9 o'clock.
Oh, yeah. Dark. Okay.
Well, it's 6 o'clock in Arizona, and we're still not getting dark till probably 7:30. Well, believe it or not, you'd think that most people would understand the time difference. It makes people think it's not live. So that was another issue. And then I don't know that we had because we were filming from 6 to 9, like if you come out here at 9 to 12, you're going to get a lot different calls for service. 6 to 9, people are still coming home from work, eating dinner. And so I don't know that we had the traffic that they wanted either. So I think there was a lot combined in it, and we miss them. Sometimes it's nice it's just one less thing to worry about, but we miss it. We had a good time, and it was fun, and people in the county liked the show, and obviously there's a lot of people that are just great fans, and it's nice to hear from them and that they miss us. But yeah, we don't know if they're coming back. We think that they may be back because of another program we'll be on in the fall, or at some point that we already filmed.
Okay. Well, maybe you can get yourself a full-time gig when you're not doing the sheriff thing, so you can have two full-time jobs, and you can sit next to Sticks over there and kind of talk about each case as the film.
You know what? Sticks has got a great thing going on. That guy is, I'm a big believer. Opportunities don't always come at the right time, but you got to take advantage of opportunities when they come.
Yes,
and Sticks absolutely jumped on that, and now he's parlayed it into his own show, and Good for him. I love it.
I do too. All right, let's change horses here. You've created something. I guess it's a special section in your jail for veterans. What is that about?
So we started our Humvee program. I actually got the idea from Sheriff Peter Katusian out of Middlesex County, Massachusetts. Great guy, great sheriff, and very, very. I hate to use the word progressive because I don't.
Yeah.
But he's very
forward leaning.
Yes, yeah, he's very forward thinking on a lot of things he did. Well, he has this Humvee program, which is the housing unit for military veterans. And I saw a news piece on it, and I called him like as soon as the news piece was over. I picked up the phone, and I said, I got to have this in my jail. And we did. Within a few months, we had that same program in our jail. And what we do is we take any veterans that want to participate in it, and we put them in their own pod. And we have it's a great opportunity for us to test programs out on a micro scale, and then we can look at rolling them out on a macro scale later. We to this date have 0% recidivism rate amongst our veterans. And that to me is huge. If I can keep not just veterans, but anybody from coming back to our jail because they've learned some skills and are reacclimating into our communities, then I think I've done, my job as a sheriff. And, a lot of people asked me at first, they said, well, do you feel like veterans should be treated any different than than
civilians,
everybody else? And I said, absolutely. They've come out here, they've served this country, and a lot of their issues they're dealing with were precipitated by their service in the military. And so we're not mitigating their sentences. We're very conscientious of victims that are out there. But what we are doing is I feel like I have a responsibility to return somebody to the public that is not a criminal. If I can help them or give them some skills that will help them be successful in our community. I mean, if you had a neighbor that was in jail, would you not want me to try to help him be as good as he can, give him some skills so that when he comes back out, he's a better neighbor and a better citizen? And that's what we're trying to do.
I'm glad you brought up the topic of skills. I'm a big proponent that people need to be responsible for their own actions. And if they don't have some skills or they don't have particular talents, there are too many people out there that will help them gain those skills and talents. So, in the time of any kind of threat or any kind of condition that they may need to be prepared for, something like, fires or hurricanes or, even situational awareness, they need to learn some of these skills. They need to be accountable. And if you watch Live PD, these people, it's kind of like, I see such a waste in some abilities that they could have. Do you find that as a big frustration, Sheriff?
It is. And, there's a lot of very talented people in our jails, a lot of very smart people. And I think this life is all about trying to be the best you can be. So I am always trying to push people to challenge themselves to continue to be better. We get a lot of Americans can get very complacent in what they have, good job, and they stop pushing themselves and challenging themselves. And this goes beyond just people in our jail. It's just people in general. I'm just a big believer and a big supporter of constantly pushing yourself to be better. And I think that's the best thing that society can do for itself. And so if we can help our inmates do that, then I'm all for it, because we have a lot of talented people that are in jail just kind of wasting talents and wasting God-given abilities to really give back to society.
And get involved and make a contribution back to the community. I mean, there's always some kind of inner reward when you can do something good for the neighbor, right, Sheriff?
Oh yeah, obviously I started this charity. so many of us, we all have the same problems. We struggle with financial issues, emotional issues, loss of loved ones. There's just so many things that are, social media can really be something that causes depression. The best way to solve those problems is through service. Like, it doesn't pay you anything. It may not solve your economical position, but what it does is it puts your mind right and your emotional state right, and it allows you to work through those things. And it's just good karma, or blessings, or however you want to look at it. But I believe in service, and I think it's the best way. It's the best medicine for depression or for any problems you're having in life.
Well, I always, I refer to it as the human connection. So, Sheriff, when you're teaching somebody in your jail some kind of a skill or some kind of, you're planting a seed for a better outlook, explain what you're doing there. I mean, are you bringing in subject matter experts, or are you putting them through some kind of classes? What are you doing?
Oh, yeah. We, let's take our veterans pod, for example. They're required to do classes to stay in that program, because we want them we're pushing them to be better. And we bring in life skills people. We bring in mental health people. We bring in dogs for dog therapy. We would like to eventually get some horse therapy going on. We do a lot of different things, and we have a lot of different classes. We bring the VA in to help them. We're going to try to bring the MVD in, because a lot of these people, they struggle because they don't have a driver's license. So they get out of jail, and yet they can't pay any fines or better their life because they don't have a driver's license. And so the problem just continues. So we're going to try to help them. A lot of these guys get their driving status back, give them the best opportunity to be successful when they get out.
There's got to be a lot of reward in that. I mean, if you may not be able to reach everybody, but if you reached 5%, there's a big reward in that. Not necessarily for you, but for the people whose lives you touched. And the word spreads pretty quickly, does it not, Sheriff?
Oh, it does. I've been fortunate enough to run into several of inmates, and in particular some veteran inmates out in the community at events. And honestly, it does my heart so much good to see how successful they are. They have a job, and they come up and they thank you. They say, the Humvee program is really what put my mind right to know that I could be successful. And that made all the difference for me.
There's lots of organizations that are out there, and you've touched on some. I mean, the Salvation Army, they work very hard at trying to, make those human connections and kind of, help people rise up. Watchman of America does the very same thing. And so then what you're doing is you're helping people give back to the community, and then you're giving them some kind of other hope that they didn't have. Did I get that right?
That's it. That's it. It gives people an opportunity to serve, and it allows these people to get the hope. That's what they lose, and that's what, when people are struggling in life and commit crimes, a lot of them, they've lost hope.
Yeah, when you lose that, you kind of lost everything. Let's switch gears here a little bit. Did you believe when you became sheriff that the whole human smuggling and the drug interdiction kind of cases was going to be as big as they really are in America?
I had a pretty good idea of it. That honestly was not a surprise to me. And honestly, I think there's been somewhat of a reduction in a lot of that because of the change in the presidency. I'm not going to say it's some of it has changed a little bit, evolved, like the families come into the country and causing, family separation issues. And, but yeah, I was pretty aware of what the smuggling problem was, the problems we have with the cartels, bringing human trafficking and drugs trafficking in our communities, our state, our country. So I was not that surprised by that.
but it is big. I get emails.
Oh, yeah.
It's huge. I get emails every day in these clusters from the FBI and these cases that, that they've resolved, and they're all the same thing. And
they are.
And I wonder how many cases are out there that are just handled by local law enforcement that never get to the FBI level. Sheriff Mark, we've got some big, huge problems that it's kind of like the deck chair off the Titanic, right?
It really, I tell people all the time, it isn't about immigration anymore. The cartel is using this as a business model. They're taxing people. They're the ones taking the money to bring people into this country. They're making them carry drugs. They're kidnapping. They're human trafficking. When somebody is against immigration or ICE, I just don't understand it, because there's so much human trafficking. It doesn't matter what side of the party, what party you're with. You should care that people are being trafficked into this country and being used to carry drugs and being used for sex. And that should be alarming to every American across this country.
Well, I know in your job and with all of your deputies, you see the sublime to the ridiculous, and having, you as a sheriff come on the Denise Simon Experience and explain some of this and put it in context, it really ought to just send shivers and shudders down everybody's spine. It's a huge thing that it's almost as though media doesn't want to talk about the size of the problem of human trafficking, do they?
No, they don't. They don't. And, I've explained it. I've had several different political views come to our county and talk about this, because we're a 287G jail. So when I first took office and Trump was taking office, that was a big hot topic. And I had a lot of people from all different political, views come in, and every one of them leaves understanding this issue much better. And I think they changed their opinions, because this is a problem for us. 40% of all illegal drugs that come into this country come across the Arizona borders. And the drugs that are killing our children and that are just saddling our adults with addiction, those are coming from the cartel. Mm-hmm. These are people that are bringing these things into our country legally. They're using other people to do it. If you go on our Facebook page, Pinal County Sheriff's Office, you'll see a video we posted recently where we were working with Border Patrol, rounding up people dressed in camouflage, bringing heroin and marijuana and different drugs into this country. And that goes on every day at our borders here in Arizona.
Ladies and gentlemen, big round of applause for Sheriff Mark Lamb. Thanks for being with us on the Denise Simon Experience. And I'm going to tap you on the shoulder again real soon to come back. And thanks for the public service that you're doing, ladies and gentlemen. It's fun having you with us, and we'll see you again very soon.